the dynamics of human capital-based professional services, they're all pretty much the same, how we scale and execute.
The business of law is changing.
Yes.
Like, it's going to change. It's kind of like the last fragmented space.
We work with founders who have a desire to eventually sell their business to private equity.
Seth Deutsch, welcome to On the Verge podcast, right here in Crested Butte, Colorado. And I just want to thank you for traveling this distance to join me here. We've had a great time.
It's been incredible. Thanks for having me.
And Seth, just like I have to say, you were almost the pickleball champion this week.
Almost.
But you brought great skill and great coaching. And so we've had a blast playing pickleball and doing some different trails around Crested Butte. So I want to give you a little intro. You went to Rice University.
I did.
And played basketball there.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously you're sitting, but for those that can't see, this man is 6'7". You also then, I think you told me you had an injury, and then ultimately you became a coach there.
That's right. Yeah,
at Rice.
I had 9 surgeries between the ages of 16 and 19.
Wow.
And eventually, wisely, they would not clear me to play. Mm-hmm. And so then I coached for 2 years as a student assistant. When I graduated, I stayed on as a full-time assistant.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful.
So after that, then you went on and got your MBA at Kellogg.
I majored in war studies. I graduated from the Baker Institute of Public Policy at Rice. I had always thought about playing professionally, and then coaching. Yeah. Well, all the playing ended. Then I started coaching early, and emotionally, I needed to get away from the game. And I had also been recruited by the CIA, but with my height, not to be in the field, to be an analyst.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't sure that was what I wanted. So I had to go basically scratch together a career. And so I started in the oil and gas industry, and then got interested in technology, was a part of 2 startups. Both of those we exited to publicly traded companies. And the second company we sold to Sun Microsystems, who was later acquired by Oracle. And at that time, when we sold the company, I signed a 3-year retention contract. And I'm like, I should go take a business class.
Yeah.
I've been doing all this stuff, but I've just been figuring it out. And so, I went back to Kellogg while I was running a large business for Sun outside of the United States.
Yeah, and in that Sun, it was mostly sales and marketing.
Correct.
Right, for that round.
That's right.
And then you were there for a number of years, and then went on to AECOM.
First, I went to Eaton. And so what happened was I moved back up to the Midwest after I met my spouse. And I'm like, man, it's going to be hard to be, I was in the identity management and security space. And I'm like, it's going to be hard to be a tech entrepreneur living in places like Cincinnati at the time. And so I'm like, why don't I pivot into industrial? And so, and when I was there, one of my classmates, Kevin Willis, who was the CFO at Ashland, suggested something to me that I had never conceived of. And he said, you should become a CEO. And I'm like, okay, why not? And I set a 15-year goal. And to do that, I needed to learn how to really run a business. And so I went to work for a company called Eaton, which is a publicly traded, diversified industrial conglomerate. And I started to do turnarounds and restructurings on some of their smaller business units. Yeah. So I went from software. The first business I ran at Eaton was an aftermarket truck parts remanufacturing business. While I was doing that, the third business I was restructuring was in the hybrid and electric powertrain business, and I needed an infrastructure partner in China. I got connected with AECOM, and I got to know members of their board. It's actually funny, Malcolm Gillis, who was the president at Rice University, was on their board.
Okay.
And so through that relationship, I'd kept up with Malcolm throughout the years. They wanted someone from outside. AECOM stands for Architecture, Engineering, Construction, Operations, and Maintenance. They wanted someone from outside the industry to come run global sales for AECOM and to start a new business unit focused on the industrial markets.
Yeah.
So that's how I went into professional services, and that's where I've stayed.
Yeah.
And so at AECOM, that little industrial business, we took from about 25 million to 2 billion acquisitively and organically over 6 years.
Wow, and that's incredible growth.
It was nuts.
It's just so wild how your journey, from Rice, playing basketball, coaching, to then saying, oh, okay, somebody just plants a little seed in your brain, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I want to be a CEO.
Sure.
And I love that you set a goal though. You're like, hey, if I'm going to do that, I got a goal. I got to have a goal to be a CEO, and then that leads you to, all these various different opportunities, both domestic, international.
Well, I'll tell you something about that too that I think is really important, especially for young people. I took a 50% pay cut, left my wife in Cincinnati, rented a 1-bedroom apartment in Kalamazoo, Michigan, to go to learn how to run a business.
Yeah.
Because I had set myself on a path, and I'm like, I have to go transform myself, and I'm going to have to go take a step back so that I can then leap forward.
It's interesting. You are now an entrepreneur.
Yes.
But before, most of your career up to the age of 50, which, by the way, happy birthday,
Thank
because
you.
you just turned 50.
Thanks.
So you're half a century old.
Yeah.
And I've joined you recently. You were operating all these different businesses, mostly in professional services, both blue collar and
White collar. Yeah.
white collar, right? So you got all this various amounts of experience in all these different industries, scaling companies from, I think I saw 40 people to 500 people. And you mentioned this.
Yep.
That was probably the company that you went from a few million to.
We did. We took that
400 million.
that company we took from 1 million of profit to 30 million of profit in 2.5 years.
And so remind me of the commercial that you saw when you were younger. Remind me of that story.
When I was a kid, there was a commercial on TV from BASF, the chemical company. And the tagline was basically, we don't make the thing, we make the thing better.
Yeah.
That's how I had conceived of myself. And I would, whether it was a public company or a founder-led company or a private equity-backed company, people would come to me with a thing and a vision.
Yeah.
Say, we want to go here. And I'd be like, I like the foundation that you've built. I understand where you want to go, but something is in your way. Let me come in and help take you there. And that's really the coaching mentality in me as well. It's like, we don't make the players. The players come to us. We see their potential, right? And we help to develop and unlock that both individually and as a team. And so I've always taken that approach. And I decided recently that I was going to build my own thing from scratch, which is very scary. I actually still don't believe I can do it, but I'm putting that negative self-conception aside and doing it anyway.
Well, you're doing it. You're already successful, right? And
Yes.
so I love that you're taking on this next chapter of your life and saying, hey, I'm going to build something.
Yeah.
Using all this experience that you've had across these various industries. I've personally had some great interactions with you through our other company, Legal Monkeys. So I want to talk about what you're doing at Sampson.
Yeah, so we specialize in blue collar and white collar services, and how I got into that mix was at AECOM. It's what taught me how to do this, because 80% of my business was architecture, engineering, environmental services, construction management. These are all professional services, but focused on the built environment.
Right.
And we also did operations and maintenance of industrial factories and plants. And so at scale, my business unit at AECOM was 10,000 employees across 15 lines of service in 80 countries. And so I learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work across so many businesses there. Over time, I've taken the experience in white collar professional services, and I've also helped to scale finance and accounting firms, CPA firms, law firms, marketing firms. The dynamics of professional, human capital based professional services, they're all pretty much the same, how we scale and execute. And then in blue collar, after I left AECOM, I went and did my first buy and build with a private equity sponsor. We built and scaled an HVAC and refrigeration and cooking equipment maintenance company from 40 technicians to 400 technicians nationally, and did 10 acquisitions and sold that to another private equity firm. And then I did one in accounting, et cetera. And so today what we do, and it's not just me, I've got about 30 people on the team. We work with founders who have a desire to eventually sell their business to private equity or to a third party, not to their children, not an ESOP to their employees, but they have decided for whatever reason that they want to sell to private equity, either as what we call platform investment or as an add-on acquisition. That mentality, that way of, you have to look at your business as an asset and look at it through the investor's eyes to maximize your exit. Because my team has worked with over 200 private equity firms. We have collectively had over $5 billion in exits as a team. We've collectively done over 200 acquisitions. We understand the founder and how to shape that business, and we understand what investors want. The other thing we do is we partner with private equity firms that want to enter these areas, whether it's blue collar, white collar services, but as professional investors, many of them have never run businesses.
Sure.
And so it's basically called an outsourced operating partner model, but we basically bring them the talent to help them evaluate deals, underwrite deals. Then we will put people on the boards to help them and the teams that they're investing in realize exits.
So you're helping founders exit their companies.
Yep.
Professional service companies.
And blue collar.
But also you take the private equity, which a lot of people may not understand, but there is a ton of money out there and that money has to be invested, right?
Has to be.
So tell me, let's just educate us about private equity, family offices,
Sure.
And from their perspective, they're looking for investments, not just public equities. They're looking for private equity investments.
Yep.
A lot of times they may not understand the industries in which they want to invest in. So that's where you come in.
That's where we come in. We bring them the talent to help them understand.
It fascinates me that when I started understanding more about private equity, that there's that much money out there and they literally sometimes don't have places to put it.
Correct. Yeah, trillions of dollars are parked in private equity funds, and private equity takes on different forms. So let me simplify private equity for the audience if I can. And I learned this from one of the firms we partner with, a family office called the Pritzker Organization. Many people have heard of the Pritzker family in the United States. Their foundation was the Hyatt. And then they started to create a conglomerate of other businesses around the Hyatt. And they were the first family in the 1940s to secure a loan to acquire a business simply based off of that business's future cash flows. Not securitizing it with real estate, not personal guarantees, not gold, right? We're going to buy this company. We're going to get a loan from a bank. We're going to deploy capital simply based on our belief that in the future, this company will continue to generate cash flow to give us a return. That was the creation of private equity in the United States. Fast forward to the 1990s, late 1990s, there were probably 50 private equity firms in the United States. Fast forward to 2002, Dick Lappin, I've got a number of his papers. His son, Reed, is a dear friend of mine. He was the first ever operating partner, a person like me, for Blackstone. You've heard of Blackstone.
Of course.
They're now massive. At that time, there were about 150 private equity firms in North America. Blackstone was the largest with $8 billion of assets under management. Dick's philosophy was quite simple, and we employ many of his techniques today in the work that we do, which was find a really good company with strong economic factors that is anti-fragile and recession resistant, and surround it with great management. Now, it sounds simple. It's really hard. Now, at that time, 2002, 150 private equity firms in North America, right? Yeah. Today, just in North America, 6,000.
Wow.
What has happened is people have realized that, oh, this is really interesting. We can buy private businesses. We don't have to be publicly traded. We don't have to provide, quarterly, investor reports. We don't have to worry about someone buying stock in a public market and creating an activist board, because you don't really have control of these things as much in the public markets. In the private market, you can take a business, you can shape it, right, without public scrutiny, grow it, and then perhaps sell it again. So traditional private equity gets its money from outside investors. They have to return that capital to investors.
Sure.
The only way they can do that is after they sell a company that they've acquired. Whereas a family office can, like the Pritzker organization,
Sure.
they can hold an asset into perpetuity.
Right.
They just need to provide dividends and income to the family.
Right.
So a lot of private equity, though, is pension funds. And I always remind people of this. In private equity, we lose track of this. Who are we working for? One of the funds I work with very closely, I'm proud to serve on 3 of their boards, and I consider myself part of their family, Great Range Capital in Kansas City. Their largest investor is the Teacher and Firefighters Pension Fund in the state of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So when we are buying, developing, growing, and selling firms on their behalf, we are providing returns to pensioners.
Sure.
That's who we're actually working for. We lose sight of this. In today's market, and it's part of what's happening in your market in legal, there are a number of industries that are saturated. There's been a lot of acquisitions. I did one in the CPA, finance and accounting space.
Yeah.
You know, when I started in that industry, there wasn't a lot of private equity interest. And so we were able to buy really good companies for 5 or 6 times. A lot of interest came into that industry from private equity. When we sold the company, we sold it for 15 times earnings,
Right.
because so much private equity was coming into the sector, and it had become a very hot
And
thing.
you're talking the accounting sectors, because what happened in the accounting sector is what's starting to happen, and we're like on the tip of the spear of this private equity interest in legal.
Yes.
Which really, like the medical profession and the accounting profession, they're professional services that have, like we have, like the state bar, they have their various different.
Absolutely. There's an ethical, the reason that alternative business structures are required in dental, medical, CPA, and legal is that there's this ethical line so it's like, I use this example in dental, right? And then we'll use an example in CPA, then we'll talk about legal. In dental, let's say I actually have to go get a tooth fixed. I need a new seal from an old cavity. So the dentist takes a look at this and he says, oh, you need a new seal. That'll be $250.
Yeah.
The private equity, if that group was owned by private equity could say, you know what? Anytime someone comes in with that issue, we want you to give them a dental implant because you can sell that at 10 times the revenue.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot tell the dentist how to practice.
Right.
You're crossing the ethical line. They've got a Hippocratic oath.
Yeah.
In the CPA space, when you take a look at audit, for example, right? Who are auditors really working for? They're working on behalf of the public, right? To provide independent, audited financial statements. We cannot influence how they are doing their work. Right. So there's an ethical line. So in that case, in the case of dental, medical, CPA, what we can do is we can acquire the back office, right? But the CPAs, the dentists, the surgeons live separately from that.
Maintaining their professional judgment to continue to do their job.
That's right.
But I want to point out that there was not a lot of private equity interest in those industries because of the barriers associated with the professional judgment, right? Because there are laws that prevented their participation because they couldn't influence the professional.
That's correct. So they came up with these alternative structures. In the world of dental, it's called a DSO, Dental Services Organization. They're not actually buying the dental practice, they're buying the back office. Right, and then leasing that back to the practitioner. So it's the dentist over here and everything else, the hygienist, the IT staff, the receptionist, the marketing, the brand, the real estate, everything you can imagine, medical supplies, medical equipment, all lives over over here. And
Sure.
in this separation, you can still get about 95 to 97% of the free cash flow through this managed service agreement out of the entity post-compensation after you pay the dentist. The CPA space really took root. It was Andre Moore at New Mountain Capital who did the first alternative structure in the CPA space with Citrin Cooperman. Now the AICPA has blessed the alternative structure. And so we now see about 40 massive roll-ups in the CPA space. New Mountain just sold Citrin Cooperman to Blackstone. They've done another much larger deal in the CPA space. They've got their next one that they're doing, Grant Thornton. Many people have heard of Grant Thornton.
Because there's so many private equity companies out there, they're looking for different deals. So as time went on, some of these other more complicated transactions, right, that had these challenges, they were willing to start really thinking through. They needed places to put their money.
That's right.
And so they thought through, they found these alternative structures so that they could invest in these companies that have these particular barriers, these professional services.
And let's stay on that for a second,
Okay.
and let's talk about why they were drawn to accounting, right? And it's very similar in like, why are they drawn to legal? Now, in accounting firms, especially when we look at the big four, PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Ernst & Young, et cetera, complicated partner structures, complicated compensation structures, pension structures, all these types of things. However, you can manage that. But when you take a look at accounting and taxes, audit engagements are 5 years. You often don't change auditors. Taxes aren't going anywhere. The predictability of future cash flow is amazing. And if you have keeping people is really hard. But if you have accountants, guess what? You're going to win work. It's the same thing. This is a parallel to my world in HVAC and electrical and plumbing. Not enough people go to trade school.
Sure.
Guess what? If you actually can keep technicians, I guarantee you will win work.
Yeah.
So the accounting space has become heavily invested. It wasn't 3 years ago. Today, so you could buy a big accounting firm back then for 6-7 times. Today, you're going to pay 15 to 18 times.
Right.
So now, but private equity has to make these big returns, 3 to 5 times, right? Every dollar they put in, they want to get 3 to 5 back when they sell it. So they're like, is there something else? Is there something else that has stable, predictable cash flows, that has stable, sustainable demand, that looks like things we know, human capital heavy, professional services. And if we look at something like legal, as we start to examine this, well, gosh, we've already figured this out in accounting. We've figured it out in medical. We've figured it out in dental. Might that apply here? And what we're starting to see is the answer is yes. I would say we're still in the bottom of the first inning. We are back where, CPA first started 3-4 years ago. It has accelerated dramatically.
Sure.
We are in the bottom of the first inning now in legal.
I think everybody recognizes, at least in 2025, that all of a sudden things have changed. Of course, we've had the ABS rules in Utah and Arizona that kind of opened things up. But I don't think that that's really taken off so much as the LSO. Right, these other structures, because that's been done in these other industries.
That's right. We talk to people about this all the time. We educate the market about it. Thank you for letting us educate lawyer owners about this. Private equity is fairly risk adverse. Private equity is not venture. Venture, it's like, hey, 1 in 10 might work. And that one, we might get 100 times return, but there might be 6 failures in that portfolio. Everything has to succeed in private equity. And so there's a more stringent look. I would equate it to not speculative real estate, but, traditional real estate investing. So they can't have failure. Someone has been the first, but they're looking at the others. And so you've got to stand up in front of your investment committee, and you have to go to your LPs, the pension funds that you've taken money from, and said, hey, guess what? We're going to do this. So you have to get all of that approval. And because the LSO looks so similar to what they have already underwritten in CPA and dental, that is why the LSO structure, sometimes hybridized with an ABS, which we can talk about, but it's why that's the prevalent structure. And when they are typically looking at firms that are either billable hour or flat fee, in these markets, you do not have what we see in, let's say, mass torts or sometimes in personal injury where you'll have a large harvest event.
Sure.
But in billable hour, just like CPA, or in fixed fee engagements like we see in estate planning or corporate immigration, 99% of what is done there is a fixed fee paid upfront engagement.
Sure.
The economics work really well. And when we take a look at LSO structuring in the United States, the first LSO occurred in the U.S. in a law firm in 2006 in Texas. There's never been an ethical bar challenge of an LSO structure in now 19 years of their existence in the United States.
Just to be clear, this LSO, that's essentially taking all of the back office that exists. I mean, from trademarks to marketing to
IT,
benefits,
insurance,
all of
everything.
The non-legal assets of a law firm that exists in a law firm. Those are the things that are being stripped out of these firms and purchased by a private equity group, leaving the lawyers and the cases.
That's it.
To be worked. And then the lawyers working the cases generate fees, which then they're paying a portion of to the LSO to manage the business of law. And they continue to do the practice.
That's exactly right. It's that simple. It's everything but the lawyer. Imagine outsourcing the entire back office of a firm other than the lawyer.
Sure.
Just like in the dental example.
Yeah. So these transactions, I know you say we're in the bottom of the first inning.
That's my opinion.
Transactions are happening, though. They're not very well publicized. So some of these accounting firms are looking at acquiring law firms.
It's already happened. There are 3 publicly known examples of this, and more coming, of these structures with very sophisticated private equity in the United States. Most recently, Charles Bank, very sophisticated investors. The folks that run Charles Bank used to run the endowment for Harvard. They have a CPA roll-up called Aprio. Aprio has decided to now vertically integrate into legal. They bought my friend Andy Kovesik's firm. Now Andy is running Aprio Legal. That was the first CPA firm buying an alternative business structure law firm because they want to offer, estates and wills. They want to offer M&A transaction work, employment agreement work, all this stuff to their corporate clients.
Yeah.
The other thing that has unlocked this and really, taken a lot of notice in the U.S. market was KPMG. And it's funny, when KPMG got their approval, people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that KPMG is going to go into legal. What is going to happen? How can accounting and law exist together? And there's some naivete there because if you just Google KPMG Legal, guess what? They already have 3,700 lawyers outside of the United States. Yeah. They have developed an incredible technology stack to automate a lot of corporate matters along with offshore labor. It is probably the most technology forward corporate law firm in the world. And now that capability is coming to the United States. Yeah. And so folks in big corporate law, they're a bit nervous.
Sure.
Because they have underinvested in technology and efficiency. And so we are going to see a few things happen, not only more investors getting into the space, but there are 2 other segments that are taking the attention of private equity. Number one, there's going to be a massive amount of technology investment now in law firms in this market. Right. So we're now starting to see roll-ups of IT service providers to the legal industry, and we're now starting to see roll-ups of software companies to the private equity industry. Now, back way up, and I'll ask you a question. Is there anything at your firm that you outsource today?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Give me an example.
medical records.
Medical records. Now, when you outsource medical records, is that ethical for you to outsource that?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the medical records outsourcing firm that you send your work to, are they allowed to make a profit?
Sure.
Okay. And what do you think standard profit in that industry for someone providing that service to law firms is? Do you think these companies operate 25% profit margin?
15 to 30, I would assume.
15 to 30. So let's just say 25.
Okay.
So guess what? If you carve that out, if you're doing that in-house today and you carve that out into a separate entity and sell that service back to yourself, guess what? You can make money.
Sure.
It just has to be market.
Right.
Because and how did you generate the revenue or the cash
Right.
to pay for that outsourced service?
Sure. Through the professional work that you do.
Right. So is that fee sharing though? When you
No,
pay an
that would not
outsourced service
be fee
provider?
sharing.
It's not, as
So-
long as it's market rate.
Right.
So what we do when we're structuring these LSOs, and the same thing happens in dental CPA space, we basically take a look at market acceptable profitability, right? And we lock that in as the profit margin that we can charge on top of our fixed cost basis as an outsourced service provider. Right. And so that's how these things are structured.
So there's going to be a lot of sophistication coming to the business of law through private equity, all the experiences that they've had in these different industries. The business of law is changing.
Yes.
It's going to change. It's kind of like the last fragmented space because of the barriers that exist to them making these investments. So
Correct.
They've crossed some of these barriers. They're making these investments. In your opinion, what do you see are some challenges for law firm owners coming in the future? What, as this money comes in, as this technology comes in, what are some of the challenges that law firm owners should be thinking about? I mean, there's opportunities, and we'll talk about that too, but I want to discuss the challenges.
Here's what I think the challenge is that historically, because you have not seen sophisticated outside capital, outside investment coming into an industry, everyone was basically on equal footing. And so we didn't necessarily, and I'm speaking more to corporate law.
Sure.
I think there are other segments of legal that are much more technology, people, process, and technology forward. But traditionally, in large corporate law firms, partners just wanted to take the distributions.
Sure.
Right? And so there was not a lot of investment in technology, innovation, efficiency, because they didn't have to be. And when the partners would sit around and talk about the distributions coming up and the needs of the firm from an investment perspective versus, hey, it's just status quo.
Yeah.
Let's put the money in our pocket. We don't need to reinvest this in people, technology, process automation.
Yeah.
As that happens, it is likely that those who are successful at making those investments, at becoming more efficient, I would say that there's a lot of clients that would love their lawyers to move more swiftly.
Sure.
For bills to go down. We've seen this in audit.
Yeah.
If you want to look for a proxy, you take a look at what has happened in fee compression in the audit sector. The reason that CPA firms are still able to maintain their level of profitability is because they invested in technology and offshoring.
Yeah.
And so now to compete, right? It's what they have to do. So I think the thing to be cognizant of, depending on your sector, is that if investments are being made that give people a competitive advantage that services client demand, if there's a latent need in the market and clients are not necessarily satisfied, I don't know many people that are satisfied in the corporate world with their lawyers. As better mousetraps become available that are enabled by this investment, that is something to be wary of.
Sure. So sophisticated competition is coming to the market.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
And when
At what pace, I can't say.
Well, based on the pace of accounting, like you talked about 3 years ago or 5 years ago, They were in the bottom of the first inning.
Yes.
And now they're
Middle of the
well
fifth.
into the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's very mature.
Now, it reminds me, though, I grew up in a small town, and we have a friend of the family that owned a lumber yard.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the place to get lumber until Home Depot showed up.
Yep.
And the small lumber yards, they still exist because they found their niches, but a lot of them failed as Home Depot and Lowe's started coming in. You know, as a law firm owner, I'm always concerned. I don't want to be the lumber yard that gets put out of business by the Home Depot, right? So we have to be thinking of these things. We in the personal injury space, I think the competition is heightened marketing costs.
Cost
of acquisition.
Cost of acquisition
are going to go up.
Yep.
And so, but on the opportunistic side, though, us lawyers haven't really had a succession option. You know, a lot of times, especially as law firms get really big, as they have, you know, a lot of lawyers have become very business savvy, and these firms have gotten really, really big. So there aren't partners within the firm that can afford the size of these.
Agreed.
And especially as private equity comes in, the value of these firms are going to go up.
Over time,
so there's going to be
correct.
less opportunity for law firm founders to exit with outside of their family. And so there is some good in this. And the fact is that lawyers are going to have opportunities to have succession plans.
It's a choice now, right?
Sure.
It's a choice that didn't really exist before. How you feel about it, what you want for yourself, completely different. I'll give you a different analogy to the lumberyard. I think professional services tends to consolidate in a slightly different way, and so does blue collar. And I'll give you a blue collar example. You know, there are some very big, successful HVAC companies. HVAC has been consolidating for a long time, right? And it makes sense. You think about predictability of future cash flow.
Sure.
People like comfort.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And your air conditioning breaks. You're probably going to fix it. You know, the industry's been consolidating for now about 25 years. Some of the biggest players are 5-6 billion in revenue. But for all of the consolidation that's happening, 85% of the market in the United States are still founder-led businesses. 85% after 25 years of consolidation. There's a place for everything, everyone in the market, but I think it's interesting because now you, others across all sectors of legal will have something else that you can consider because if you don't have family to take over the business, if your partners cannot afford to pay you what you now think is reasonable, because reasonable valuation has now changed.
Sure.
Right? Because before, what happened in legal were cashless mergers, a 10-year, 5-year earnout at maybe 1-2x earnings, because that's what people could afford to pay. Well, guess what? Now people are willing to pay, outside capital is willing to pay anywhere between 3 to 7 times earnings. It's something that you at least owe it to yourself, whether you choose to go down that path or not. This option is now available to you, but it's not available to everyone because not every firm is acquirable, right? Not every firm, everyone hears the top of the range that I just mentioned. Not everyone gets the top of the range, but there's this new option that is available that is worthy of exploring.
Yeah, certainly worthy of exploring. There's certain risks that lawyers absolutely need to hire ethics counsel to make sure
Absolutely.
of. You know, there's a lot of complications in it. There's a lot of unknown. Again, it's the bottom of the first inning. Some lawyers have already made the decision. They have sold their practices to these groups, but they're taking some risk with that. And certainly as some time passes, more transactions will happen. Maybe there'll be some litigation that will shake out the space, and a lot of options. We don't know. But I do want to thank you for being here. You've given a ton of information, right, for people to chew on. I've investigated this stuff, but I'm still confused. And I know there are other lawyers that may be listening to this podcast that are going to be confused. So how do people reach out to you if they want more information?
They can reach out to me via email. It's Seth, SETH, at Samson, SAMSON, partnersgroup.com. Or they can just call or text me. It's 312-560-5577. I don't have
The
a fancy
guy that-
number,
Yeah.
but
Well, he still answers his phone.
Yeah.
Right. But maybe not for long. You're getting
well,
pretty
I'm getting
busy.
some help.
You're
I'm
getting
getting
pretty
some
busy.
help with my scheduling, but
How about LinkedIn? I know
Oh,
you
yeah,
have a
li- yeah,
LinkedIn.
li-
There's a
LinkedIn.
Samson Group LinkedIn. There's,
Samson Group on LinkedIn. There
There's
aren't
also
many.
you have your own personal LinkedIn.
Yes, you can find me there at linkedin.com/in/Seth Deutsch. Easy to find me. Ping me. And our website is samsonpartnersgroup.com. I'm very responsive. So if I can't get back to you, if you do call, I might let it go to voicemail, but I will get back to you within 24 hours and my EA will set up a time for us to talk.
Well, man, I think you have some exciting opportunities ahead as you link these private equity clients of yours with potentially future law firm owner clients.
Yeah.
And be interested to see where this industry goes.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. I know you pretty well now, but you're definitely on the verge. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.